Yesterday, Nick Smith announced a target of 90% of rivers and lakes being, and I quote, swimmable by the year 2040. Heads were scratched about what exactly the targets meant and whether the goalposts had been shifted. And opinions were polarised. Generally speaking, farming groups welcomed the targets, while scientists and environmental groups were confused or disappointed by them. Appointed as an independent watchdog for the environment, charged with maintaining or improving its quality, Dr. Jan Wright is the Parliamentary Commissioner for the environment. What does she think of what Nick Smith announced yesterday? Well, we asked her.
I think there's some good things in it. This document is largely a reaction to the public outcry about wadeability being a standard for fresh water, if you recall. And people really said, wadeable is not good enough, we want to be able to swim. And so they have moved to a focus on swimmability. And the government has taken on the message that people want to go down to a river on a hot day and jump in. Another thing they've done in it, they've got maps with a colour scheme that grades rivers in swimmability from blue to red, where blue is excellent and red is very bad. And they've published all of those, and that's sort of very transparent, and that's going to upset some of the councils. So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And another thing they've done is there's certainly plans there for a lot more fencing, which will keep stock out of rivers, and some work on town sewage. I'd like to see a lot of planting inside those fences, between the fences and the river, because that would keep more of that fecal matter out. But on the bad side, it's very confusing. There have been some goalposts moved, or some ways of measuring things moved, and it's very difficult to tell whether things are being tightened or loosened, and that's a big concern of mine. But I guess the thing that bothers me the most, and bear in mind I've had very little time to actually read this document, is that they're looking at all water and all these rivers and all these lakes across the country, and in many of those rivers and lakes, or parts of them, people don't want to go and swim, and they never do, or very seldom. So really, why would you worry about swimmability where it's excellent because it's high in a catchment and really cold? So, when I grew up in Christchurch, Coes Ford in the Selwyn River was a place to go and swim in a river, and it was lovely. It's not now. And that's what we're worrying about. I would not be inclined to go and swim in a river up at Arthur's Pass, where it would be lovely and pristine, but it's just too cold. So when you come to think about swimmability, and it's where do people want to swim and what time of the year? And so there's another water image. There's sort of a dilution that's gone on by putting the whole length of these rivers in and the whole area of these lakes.
Right. So when the government says 90%, that includes national parks, that includes way up in the high country where no one ever goes, and that includes a whole lot of places where ice melts, where no one ever swims. So in fact, the 10% is disproportionately likely to be down by the coast and where the people are.
Well, you can see that as soon as you look on the maps. And so, there's good information in this document on the website. And you can see red, orange, yellow around the coast, places like Northland, Auckland, Taranaki, quite a bit in Southland. So, and in many of those cases where you get those other colours, it's where people do live and where they do want to swim. So we've known this for a long time. Basically, the lower you get down in a developed catchment, the closer you get to the sea, generally, the worse things get, because it's just the way.
Do we try hard enough in this country, or does this still look like smoke and mirrors and lip service?
There's some trying hard going on. There's a lot of changes. You'll see a lot more planting alongside streams and rivers. We've got some work to do upgrading sewage from some of the towns. We can do more, and we need to do more. And I would like to see when the milk price was high, I would have liked to see a lot of action there when the farmers were wealthy, and it's harder to make them do things when they're not. So this comes and goes a bit. But, there's a lot of planting going on, there is fencing going on. If we keep the stock out, it helps. But as long as we don't add too many more, that's when it's going to go backwards.
Right, that's a very good point, and I want to end with that. What you're saying is we have to define a limit on intensification. We have to say at some stage, enough, no more, because of the water.
Well, at some stage, if we want the water to be clean, we're going to have to make those decisions. Yeah, and it's really beyond that point, I think, in parts of the country, say the Waikato, maybe parts of Southland. It's But I don't know whether there's an inclination to go, or how strong that inclination is to go on adding more and more now anyway, because I think some people have been realising that you can overinvest here.
Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment, Dr. Jan Wright.